You think you know who's really in control? The truth is darker than you can imagine. Stay with me, hit that subscribe button, and like this video, because what we're about to uncover goes deeper than anyone ever thought possible. These inmates didn't just survive, they thrived. The prison yard was unusually quiet that morning. The usual chaos of shouting, the clanging of metal doors, and the shuffle of prisoners' boots against the cold concrete were missing. But something far more sinister was brewing just below the surface. Inmates were talking, whispers that could barely be heard, but they were growing louder, spreading like wildfire. Rumors of a gang war that wasn't just about turf, but about complete control of everything that happened inside the prison walls. Then, it happened. At 7:23 a.m., a fight broke out in the mess hall. What started as a minor dispute between two inmates quickly escalated into a full-blown melee. But it wasn't just about food. It wasn't even about the usual reasons inmates fight. This was different. This was about power, control. The gang leaders knew what they were doing. They knew that every fight, every small incident, could shift the power balance inside the prison. As Officer Dan Patterson walked into the mess hall, he saw the chaos unfolding. But his eyes weren't focused on the fight itself. They were locked on Marvin the Shadow Davis, a feared inmate leader who had been serving a life sentence for a series of murders. He stood at the back, calmly watching the commotion. His hands were tucked into the pockets of his prison jumpsuit, and he didn't seem at all concerned about the escalating violence around him. Davis was no ordinary inmate. He wasn't just another gang leader. He was the puppet master, pulling the strings behind everything that happened in the prison. The guards didn't know it, but Davis controlled the entire system. Drugs, weapons, contraband. He had it all running through the prison. He didn't need to fight his battles himself. His word was law, and anyone who crossed him knew the price. Detective Carla Brooks had been investigating the prison for weeks, trying to get to the bottom of the chaos. Her partner, Detective Juan Delgado, had been following a trail of corruption that led straight to the warden. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized that Davis's influence was deeper than anyone realized. No one in the prison system seemed to know how powerful he had become. But Brooks was determined to find out. Her first breakthrough came when she received a tip from an anonymous source within the prison. Someone inside was willing to talk, but only if Brooks met him alone in the dead of night. It was a dangerous game, but Brooks had no choice. The clock was ticking, and she was running out of time. That night, she met the informant in the prison yard, beneath the dim glow of the lights. The air was cold, and she could hear the distant sound of the guards patrolling the perimeter. The informant was nervous, but he had information that could change everything. "They call him the Shadow for a reason," the informant whispered. "He controls everything. The gangs, the drugs, even the guards. No one moves without him knowing about it. And it's not just in this prison. It's everywhere. He's got a network. And it's not just about power inside the walls, it's about the outside world too." Brooks's heart raced. The implication was staggering. Davis wasn't just running a prison gang. He was running a criminal empire, and he had the connections to reach far beyond the prison's walls. As Brooks left the meeting, her mind was spinning. What had started as a routine investigation into a string of prison fights had now turned into something far bigger. She had uncovered a hidden world, one that ran on fear, loyalty, and ruthless ambition. And the worst part? The gang leaders inside Angola weren't just criminals. They were untouchable, orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. Brooks knew she had to act fast. The system was corrupt, and she couldn't trust anyone, not even the warden. She was on her own, but the discovery of Davis's empire was only the beginning. But as Brooks prepared to expose the truth, she received a call that would change everything. "Detective, we found something, and you need to see this. Stay tuned. The web of corruption is about to unravel, and what comes next will leave you speechless." The next morning, Detective Brooks arrived at the prison just before dawn, a sense of urgency in her step. She had spent hours the previous night poring over the documents she'd collected, gang affiliations, smuggled contraband lists, the underworld of crime that was thriving under Angola's roof. But there was one piece of the puzzle that she couldn't shake. Marvin the Shadow Davis wasn't just running a prison gang. He had created an empire, one that connected prisons from coast to coast. His reach was growing, and the evidence was all around her. Brooks stood in the hallway of the prison's administrative building, staring at the thick metal door to the warden's office. The door was always closed, but today, it felt like the beginning of something dangerous. She'd been investigating for months, trying to piece together how Davis had taken control not only of the gangs but also of the very system meant to imprison him. The guards, the wardens, even the lawmakers, they were all complicit in his empire. Inside, Warden Richard Hayes sat at his desk, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the papers in front of him. The normally confident man now appeared on edge, as though something was weighing heavily on his mind. "Detective," he said, his voice low, almost nervous. "I've been expecting you." Brooks didn't sit. She couldn't afford to waste time. "You knew this was coming," she replied. "You've been covering for Davis, haven't you?" Hayes shifted in his chair, avoiding her gaze. "I've been doing my job, detective. I'm trying to keep the peace in a place that's anything but peaceful." "Peace?" Brooks scoffed. "You've allowed an empire to flourish under your watch, and you call that peace? Davis is running everything. The gangs, the smuggling, the drugs, and worse, he's got the guards on his payroll. And now I have proof that he's connected to criminal networks outside these walls." The warden's face turned pale. He stood up slowly, as though trying to gather himself. "You don't understand. I'm not just a warden. I'm a prisoner, too. Davis has people everywhere. He's got connections in every prison across the country. If I try to take him down, it won't just be me who suffers. It's everyone." Brooks's heart sank. The prison system wasn't just corrupt, it was a system built on fear, a fear that had been ingrained into everyone who worked and lived within these walls. Davis's empire had grown so vast, so powerful, that it was now impossible to bring it down without bringing the entire prison system down with it. But Brooks wasn't about to let fear control her. "You've let this happen, Warden. You've allowed innocent people to suffer, all because you were afraid of one man. Well, I'm not afraid of him. I'm going to expose this, and I don't care who's involved. I will bring him down, and I will take everyone who helped him with me." Brooks left the warden's office, the weight of her words hanging in the air. She had been gathering evidence for months, but now she had the confirmation she needed. Hamilton, Morales, and Davis were part of a criminal machine that was operating in the shadows. They controlled not just the prison system, but the very streets beyond it. Every time a shipment of drugs came in, every time an inmate was transferred, Davis's influence was there. That night, Brooks sat in her office, scanning over the new documents she had received. The stack of papers was thick with details: gang alliances, prison transfers, coded messages from within Angola. But as she flipped through them, one name kept appearing: Frank the Hammer Morales. Morales had been a lifer at Angola, a man who had been serving time for murder, but his rise in the prison system had been swift. He wasn't just an inmate, he was a powerful force, an adversary to Davis. Where Davis had built his power with psychological warfare and manipulation, Morales used brute force, fear, and violence. And now, it seemed, the two were on a collision course. Brooks knew it wouldn't be long before this rivalry turned deadly. Morales had been quietly building his power in secret, waiting for the right moment to make his move. But what Brooks didn't realize was that he wasn't just interested in Angola. He was planning a full-scale takeover, and that included every prison in the state. As Brooks prepared to act, the unthinkable happened. She received a call from one of her most trusted informants, a former gang member who had turned his life around. The message was clear, but the implications were horrifying. "Detective," the informant's voice trembled, "they're going to try and kill you. Davis knows what you've found, and is coming for you. You have to get out now. It's not just the gangs, they've got the law on their side too." Brooksy's pulse quickened. She had been running on adrenaline for months, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The fight wasn't just against the gangs anymore, it was against a corrupted system that had become just as dangerous. You've seen the warning signs. Now it's time to face the truth. Stay tuned. What happens next will leave you on the edge of your seat. Detective Brooks had no choice but to go into hiding for a while. The threat was real, too real. She couldn't risk being caught in the open when the forces she was up against were closing in. Davis's empire stretched far beyond Angola. What had started as an investigation into prison gangs had grown into something much more sinister, a conspiracy, one that linked prison gang leaders, corrupt law enforcement officers, and even high-ranking officials in the state government. Brooks knew she was running out of time. Every lead she had uncovered pointed to one final confrontation. But the closer she got, the more the walls seemed to close in around her. A week later, after being in hiding and waiting for the heat to die down, Brooks received a coded message left at a secure drop-off location she had set up for just such occasions. It came from her inside source, a guard who had been feeding her information, but he hadn't been able to meet face-to-face for some time. The message was brief but clear. They are making their move tonight. Davis and Morales are coming for each other. It's going to end tonight, one way or another. The stakes had never been higher. Morales had been secretly amassing allies, and it was clear that he was planning to overthrow Davis's operation once and for all. The final confrontation was set to happen at Angola Prison, and Brooks knew she had to be there to witness it, to bring it all down. If she didn't act now, all the evidence she had collected would be useless. Worse yet, innocent lives were at stake. It was just after midnight when Brooks slipped past the security guards, making her way toward the prison yard. The moon hung low, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The blue security lights gave the place an eerie glow, as if the prison itself was watching her every move. Inmates were gathered in small groups, whispering, while the guards seemed distracted. But everything felt wrong. The air was thick with tension, as if everyone knew that something terrible was about to happen. Then, the explosion shattered the silence. A loud, thunderous sound echoed through the yard as a massive explosion rocked one of the prison's outer walls. The concrete walls cracked, sending dust and debris flying into the air. The flash of light illuminated the faces of the inmates, many of whom began to scatter. Chaos erupted as prisoners rushed to escape, and the guards scrambled to control the situation. But Brooks didn't flinch. She had expected this. She knew the plan. Morales was staging an attack to draw out Davis, to show him that his time in control was up. She didn't waste a second. Brooks ran toward the center of the yard, determined to get to the main building where Davis's operations were controlled. But as she approached, a figure appeared from the shadows. Hamilton, the enforcer Davis had used to maintain order. Hamilton stepped forward, blocking her path. "You shouldn't have come here, detective," he said coldly, his face expressionless. "This isn't your fight anymore." Brooks didn't hesitate. "You're wrong," she replied. "It's always been my fight. The truth's coming out tonight, whether you like it or not." The battle between the two gang leaders reached its climax as Davis and Morales came face-to-face in the prison yard, surrounded by their most loyal soldiers. Gunfire erupted as the two sides collided, a battle for supremacy that seemed to shake the very foundation of Angola. Brooks stood frozen, watching it all unfold. The sight of Davis and Morales locked in an intense confrontation, their eyes filled with rage, was surreal. This was what the system had bred, a vicious power struggle that had never been about rehabilitation, but about who could control the most fear. As the chaos unfolded around her, Brooks spotted something, a hidden stash of documents, tucked away inside a secure vault near the prison's main office. These documents were the final piece of the puzzle. With the explosion and the battle raging, she knew this was her only chance. She sprinted toward the vault, her heart pounding in her chest, the sounds of the fight growing louder behind her. As she opened the vault, she grabbed the files, knowing these papers would expose everything. The connections, the bribes, the cover-ups, everything that had allowed Davis and his empire to thrive. But as she turned to leave, she found herself face-to-face with Hamilton once more. The gun in his hand was steady, aimed directly at her. "You really think you can expose this?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "You're too late. The system is already in place. There's nothing you can do to stop it." Just as Hamilton prepared to pull the trigger, a gunshot rang out. It wasn't from Hamilton's gun. Instead, Davis's enforcers had arrived just in time. The tables turned in an instant, and Hamilton collapsed to the ground. The battle had ended. But Brooks knew that while the gangs had been defeated tonight, the system's corruption was far from over. They thought the war for control had ended. But as Brooks walked away, she knew the fight wasn't over. The prison system wasn't just a place for criminals, it was a breeding ground for power. and it would always need someone to fight for the truth. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more of the truth behind the walls. This story is just the beginning.